I'm excited to have walked into the seminar and heard about disturbing the students first, which is what I do most of the time. For those who do not know me a little more, I started teaching privately at my own little coaching center, and then it developed into more than a coaching center. And over a period of 15 years, I have been trying to solve the problems that I encountered in teaching students, preparing them for exams. And at the end of 15 years of doing this, I realized that there is a method in my madness. So I'm doing a kind of reverse research now, looking back at all that we have done, methods that we have developed, and realizing that there is some theory in it, there is something to talk about. I'm not from the education discipline. I am not from ELT discipline either. That is why I do not know some of the terms, and but I'm sure the practices that we have been through will interest you. This is a conference on post method. Yesterday we were at another place in Trivandrum talking about post-humanism, and there we have been talking about this, which is what I'm sure you were talking about here also in the previous 2 days. What I have to tell you is like a summing up of, I'm sure, even though I was not here previously yesterday, it is going to be a summing up of what we have been talking about. Only thing is, it is from my own work that I will be summing up those ideas. The role of the teacher has changed completely. The nature of reading has changed completely. People do not read books as before. The objectives of education have changed. People want everything faster these days. They want it to be relevant in their life. They want to be able to do things with what they learn. They're not ready to spend years getting just knowledge, abstract knowledge that will be applicable in some abstract form in their lives. They are impatient with that. And the nature of the classroom is also changing. So in this context, as you might have already talked about, the nature of the teacher has also undergone a great revolution. The teacher has to now become a leader, and probably a social leader or a social entrepreneur, bringing about concrete changes in the practice of teaching as well as in the society. Otherwise, even though ma'am says that, Deepthi ma'am says that a teacher is not going out of fashion, teacher will be the epicenter of our intellectual system. I do not agree with that. I have the creeping fear that the species of teacher is becoming obsolete, because students do not want to sit in the classroom. Students want to learn on their own. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about self-learning and how the teacher has to adapt to the practices of self-learning that are becoming more and more prevalent today. So the move should be towards empowerment of the students, help them to learn by themselves. The move should be towards a shared leadership where everybody becomes a teacher, everybody teaches themselves, rather than a linear authoritarian model that was the traditional model, which unfortunately is still the model largely in India. It is only very minimally that we have been able to, because of limitations like sir was talking about, big classrooms, the pressure of the curriculum, we have to teach hundreds of textbooks before the students get a degree, and the pressure of the principal roaming outside, making sure you're covering the portions rather than carrying out your experiments. So all these are there, but that is probably why I did not teach in a college or university. Both my parents being professors, my father is also sitting here. I have grown up seeing the limitations of the academy face to face. You have to teach the same text the same way forever. I wanted freedom, I wanted excitement, I wanted to do my own research, which is why I took the bold decision to be an entrepreneur or an edupreneur and not teach within the academy, which I am ever grateful for, because that decision has really helped me to address many of these problems and do a lot of creative things about it. So today, of late, I have been fascinated by this concept of teacher as leader, and I have been reading up on leadership theories and I was amazed to see that many of these leadership theories are actually practices that we already do, most of us, in our everyday classroom practice. Teaching is not about the teacher, as we know. It is about the student. It is about learning. The decentering of the teacher has taken place. Like that, leadership is also not about a person. It is not about the leader. It is about a set of practices distributed across a group and collectively achieved. That means the decentering of the leader means that every student has to evolve into a leader responsible for him or herself, as well as for the peer group to which he or she belongs. And therefore, leadership in education brings us to realize there is nothing new about it again. By way of summing up, as Sir has placed this as a valedictory talk, leadership in education should be more value-based, ethics-based, and more oriented towards social change. If there is no change happening as a result of teaching, as a result of classroom practice, there is something seriously wrong with it. And it is not easy to bring about this change either, because our education system is still very highly performance oriented. It is still about marks that you get in the exam. It is about whether you pass exams. I have learned a lot of things. I have changed, but I'm unable to pass this exam for various reasons. It's not an acceptable argument in our system still. So I thought about the various kinds of teacher leaders, and I did research on that, and I discovered that I have done a lot of this in my practice, and you must also be doing it in yours. So I thought we'll have a moment talking about the kinds of teacher leaders. One kind of leadership is conceptual leadership, where you have to constantly talk to students about why they are doing something. I have a very mundane profession actually, preparing students for an exam, the national eligibility test, which is not something wonderful for me. I don't like doing it. I don't like the exam. I don't like teaching students for it. But if I open my institute and say, I am not preparing you for anything, I'm just going to teach you in general so that you will love your subject, nobody is going to come to me. So for very practical business reasons, I have to lure them to come to me so that they will prepare some exam that will enable them to enter the academy. And I have a very big challenge here, because their aim is to somehow pass the exam. What they look for is shortcuts. They do not want to study the subject properly. I'm not saying every one of them, but majority come to me because they want tips, they want shortcuts, and which is not what I am ready to give them. So that first, the first step in my career itself, in my teaching, is involving conceptual education. I have to convince my students through, in a lot of different ways, that this is what is learning and this is what you should be doing. In the long run, it will help you pass exams, it will help you become better teachers. One thing I do is I give them a lot of materials. There is an encyclopedia that we have developed, which is not a narrative, which does not have narrative text. We have employed web-based ideas behind this encyclopedia. It is just a lot of pictures and just points. They can just move from one point to the other, or move from picture to picture, section to section. I wanted to simulate a web browsing technique in the encyclopedia. So I give them the encyclopedia first, and I try to convince them that you have to read these chapters, do your own work, and then come and listen to the lecture. Because otherwise, if you're hearing all these things for the first time, or they might have forgotten what they did in the MA classroom. So if you are not fresh in your memory, if you do not know everything already, you will not get the maximum benefit out of the lecture. I have to convince them this, which it is very difficult. Many students cannot do it. They just come, the first thing in the morning, sitting in the classroom. They have not done their prior reading. So again, like many of you were saying, I have to disturb them, I have to ask them questions, I have to make, drive in the idea that you did not do your work. You have to read first and then come, which is most of the time very negative. It hurts them. This conflict is there. Should I be disturbing them so much? Does it amount to demoralizing them? But increasingly, I'm convinced that being adults, they reach a point where they understand that, okay, I should be doing my work before I come to class. And this leads to absenteeism. They sit at home and read, and then occasionally only come to class. They do not attend all the lectures, which I redress, which I compensate for by sending them audios, sending them videos, so that they can learn from the classroom. But eventually it is evolving into a wonderful model where students do not depend on my lectures completely. They do a lot of reading by themselves. They take up the responsibility to study, and ultimately I'm sure they understand the concept that behind learning, that it is your responsibility, that you have to do your own reading, and you cannot just sit in the class and expect the teacher to teach you everything. I think ultimately I'm able to drive home that point. Secondly, there is strategic leadership. Connected to what I said just now, develop a strategic vision for your students. For example, the vision that you should have interdisciplinary research. You should have interdisciplinary knowledge. When you study English literature, you should also know history. You should also know, culture. You should also know philosophy and all these things. They have been given all these books. They have been given guidance. But in the beginning, they do not do it. They have to be pushed into it. It is because they take the easy way out. We don't get questions from philosophy like that. We don't need to know history that much. Okay, 1 or 2 questions will come. We can leave that out and still pass. This excuse they have all the time. So to do interdisciplinary research also, we can use technology quite a lot. Disturb them and bring them out of their inertia through activities sometimes. I have tried it in the classroom where students make videos. It is time consuming, but we don't do it every day. I know when there are 100 students, I also teach 120 students in a classroom. Every single one of them will not do it probably. Every day we do not do it probably. But once in an entire course, my course is 6 months, the courses that you teach are much longer, 1 year, 2 years. Even once within a course, it makes a lot of difference. Even if single person does not do it, if others do it also, it makes a difference. They learn from the others. They get the idea from the others, and later it comes into their practice. It is easy to think it is not possible for us to do these things, but it is possible to do all these things in small ways, which will have big repercussions. So in one batch of mine, I spent 1 entire month where students were preparing on very new writers they did not know much about. Some of them were reading, some of them were researching, and we came together and we discussed all this, and I took time out to record everything and make videos. I would sit at night and make these videos and upload them in YouTube. It was so much motivation. These students incidentally were from Maharashtra. They had very low proficiency in English language. It was impossible to get them to read and understand. They just wanted 100 questions that they can memorize so that they will pass the exam. This is why they had come to me. They were not prepared. It is not that they were not ready, but they didn't have the proficiency to reach to the levels that are required to pass NET. But they became so motivated because of the video, because of the prospect of coming in a video and being uploaded. That really fired them. And they read and they studied and they did a lot of work. It did not come out that great. They were still making mistakes, but it was the beginning of a change. It was many years ago. I now know them. They have completely changed as professors. They are now professors working in various colleges in Maharashtra, but they have completely changed. And they keep telling me those videos we made were so good. They were so inspired by that opportunity that they got. So I'm convinced that even though I don't do it in every batch, I tell stories of this to other students. Everything that I've ever done has gone to every batch in the form of videos I share. This is what we did with previous students. This is a game fest that we did with previous students. I don't have time to do a great game fest in every batch. But the method is being sold. The method is being given to them. And as teachers, I can see from my experience that it makes a lot of difference. Another kind of leadership is invisible leadership, which is, for me, as I said, very negative. I do not take a central role in teaching them. I just shake them up, and there are some very good students who come to me. They have been toppers in their colleges, and they come and sit down and they see that everybody around them is a little below them, because they are able to remember all the answers. They are able to perform well in exams, but they still have a long way to go. They have still a lot of reading to do, a lot of analysis to do, but they are complacent. They think we are great. I have to shake them out of their complacency. I have to disturb them. I have to question them every day until they cannot answer. And it hurts. But I keep telling them the objective here is not that you love me. It is not that you feel comfortable in the class. It is not that you feel, okay, great, I have answered all the questions. That is not the objective here. If you hate me, it is good for this. What I want is you to improve. I want you to bring out your best. This is not your best. I keep telling them it hurts. It's very negative. But fortunately, it always turns out that you have to learn, as we know, from the situations. You have to do the right thing at the right moment. It is a lot of risk. But it turns out that they realize that there's still a lot more to do. They become leaders of their own. I am there at the beginning of this process, invisibly. But I cannot take center stage because sometimes it hurts their ego. They want to do it themselves. They do it. I have had students who told me, it hurts me also. I have had students who told me, I studied so much and I passed and I did all this just to show you that I can do it. It is so fulfilling in a way. It is also hurting in another way, but it's wonderful. Ultimately, this is what we want to hear. Whether it's because of me or not, whether it's because of hurt or not, we want them to do it, and they do it. So we are both working towards a common goal here, letting students work towards it individually. Sometimes, like the mother cat pushes away the kittens, you have to push them away, you have to hurt them, you have to show them that. There are students who come to me saying, ma'am, can you help us with a topic? We need to do our dissertation. I said, what reading have you done? Tell me what your interests are. We'll work towards the topic. And then they tell me, our teachers didn't help us. Our department is not helping us. We have no guidance. That is the time when I have to disturb them. I said, why do you need guidance? Are you that weaklings that you don't know from your reading that you don't know what to do? Go find your topic. Go tell me what your interests are. If you do not know what your interests are, how can anybody help you? Like that, I just give them a little shock, and that is not what they expect. Ma'am is very rude. Ma'am scolds so much because they expect to be pampered. To be told that everything is okay. I will spoon feed you. I will give you everything in this packet. Everything is there. You just open and eat it. That is what they expect. But it cannot be done, right? So shake them up, and then they realize, yeah, I can do it. Where I got the scholarship to do research in Canada, and I learned this from my experience. I went to Canada expecting my supervisor to teach me what I should do. I remember the first day I stood behind, in front of her, and I said, this is my synopsis, this is what I have done so far, but I don't know anything. Please tell me what to do, I will do what you say. This was the first dialogue with my supervisor in Canada. And she looked at me, smiled at me and said, Kalyani, you should understand that I do not know your topic. You are the expert. You should tell me about your topic. I do not know anything about your topic. When you talk to me, you are the expert, and when you talk to me about your topic, I will be able to guide you. This has guided me. That dialogue, conversation with my supervisor has guided me in my teaching also. You are the student. You have to do your learning. I'm only a facilitator. I cannot teach you. I keep telling them, there is no teacher. There are only students. You and I are both students. I am learning. You are learning. I am sharing my learning with you. What do you expect from me? How can I teach you? There is no teaching, I tell them. So making them probably invisible leaders. Then the next leadership pattern that we are all following, I'm sure, is benevolent leadership, where many of my previous to former students work with me as teaching, as research assistants. Some of them are sitting here among the audience as well. I give them some jobs, make this book, make this material. Some of my research assistants now are working on an exhibition on literary theory. I just gave them an idea. I told them literary theory is very difficult for a lot of average and below average students. They do not understand the literary theory books because they do not have the language and they do not understand the concepts yet. We have to make them understand literary theory is nothing that resides in an ivory tower. It is about our everyday life. Okay, this is my idea. Collect everyday objects and paintings and whatever you want, apply literary theory on it. We will produce all this. We will conduct an exhibition on it. You will have to create a write-up on all these artifacts and objects. You will have to explain what it is. People will bring students from across Kerala or India or whatever, let them all come and interact with us and learn literary theory. This is all that I said. It has been months and people are working on it. There have been lots of challenges. Many times they didn't know what to do. I have got angry with them. I tell them I do not have time to sit and explain everything. You have to find out solutions. If you have a problem, you just don't keep quiet about it and think I have to run away, I don't know how to do, feel depressed about it. That is not the way. You have to approach me, solve your problem. If not me, you have to approach whoever. Go to whoever you want, solve your problem when they come. It has not been easy. It has been so emotional and fiery situations where people have been upset and all that. But it is necessary. They have to go through it because this is a kind of leadership and they are evolving and we are almost done. We are going to do this next month. So this is what is called benevolent leadership, where you create possibilities for students, opportunities for students, let them do it, and thereby they as well as we fulfill our social responsibilities. This is a very big learning process, which I'm sure is being done in a lot of colleges. When as teachers we organize programs, we make students do a lot of things like this. They are given challenges and opportunities to work on their own. But the more we realize this is a very important part of it, is not just preparing a cultural program, but this is part of our educational curriculum itself. It's part of learning and how it impacts on our teaching and learning. If we realize it could be probably done in a more meaningful way. And lastly, collaborative leaders, because teaching is now again not linear. It is about colleagueship. We have to develop all of them, students as our colleagues, as co-leaders. So that is called collaborative leadership. What teacher leaders do, these are all again summing up of things that we all know already. We interrogate our own practices. We have to constantly change our techniques of leadership and practices of teaching. We have to go public about our views. That is why I have come here. I have been traveling across the country, and also there is Oxford Women's Leadership Symposium where I've been presenting a paper on my work for the past 2 years. Now again I'm going next month. Every time I go, it's more learning, it's more discussion. It's wonderful. Our methods are changing because of that. We have to go public and talk to other people about what we do. inspiring other teachers, getting inspired by them, promoting colleagueship, supporting risk-taking and experimentation, refusing to follow conservative traditional practices, doing new things that you think might be against the practices of your college or against the exam, or because it might waste time, but you have to do it because it will lead to more opportunities of learning. Being sensitive to context and culture. How I treat my Maharashtrian students cannot be how I treat my Malayali students. It has to be very subtle, of course. They should not understand that there is this difference. But students have different requirements. They come from different contexts. I have students who have come from very good institutes and they have studied a lot and they know a lot of things already. They sit in the same classroom as students from villages. I have had students who told me, I give them a book and they say, this is the first book in my life. I have never had a book in my life. I have had students who did not know how to spell is and are. They are postgraduates in English. They have passed MA and they have come to me to do training for lectureship. You cannot just discard them. You cannot say, okay, they are bad students. You will never pass the exam. They should also be trained, because this is a huge country where everybody has their space. These students who cannot spell is and are also going to be teachers. I know from experience people who do not pass and who do not get admission in my center, etc., who are very low proficient, write to me, ma'am, now I'm teaching next month or within a few months, they'll say, I'm teaching in a college. They get jobs, they teach, they have to be trained. So we have all kinds of students in India, in a huge country like India. We have to be sensitive to their contexts and cultures. One huge problem we have in our education system is we have the same classroom, the same methods, the same exam for everyone. How can that be? Because their situations are different, their requirements are different, their knowledges are different. You have to find ways within the classroom to address these differences. It is possible. And adopt different models of leadership accordingly. Create an environment of learning that has a positive impact on everyone. Even when, as I said before, there are negativity, there are problems, there is fighting, there is heartbreak. We have to go back to them and again talk to them and make them understand. It's a continuous process. I have had problems with a lot of students in my life because they can't follow my method, because it's too much in the classroom, because they feel insulted when I ask them questions. I have to ask them questions. I have to break them out of their shell, but they don't want to be asked questions. One huge problem students have with me is I ask rapid fire. This is the term that all my students sitting here are laughing because they have all been scared of rapid fire. They have stopped coming to class because of that. This sometimes has become a hysteria. Ma'am, ask questions, as if this is some oppression. But it is necessary. You have to confront your limitations. You have to know that you have to do better. So I'm so glad that you're here so that I can brainwash you into falling in love with my method now. So we have to go back to them. We have to, even after the course is over, you have to get connected to them so that the method is properly conveyed, so that they realize what it is that we have been trying to do even in those negative moments. Challenges of teacher leaders. So in all this, we have had, all of us, a lot of problem in building trust and rapport. Teachers should trust us, students should trust us, they should trust our methods when we do something different. I keep thinking about Muriel Sparks' novel, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which is a very classic novel where a teacher tries out a lot of different practices and she suffers for it. I have personally been Miss Jean Brodie wherever I worked before I started TES. I worked in a college in Tamil Nadu. This is a well-kept secret that I keep telling everywhere I go. I used to work in a college in Tamil Nadu before I started TES. I was a very different teacher from all the Tamil teachers who taught there. I was revolutionary. I tried carrying out all the principles of very contemporary approaches in ELT and all that. I was thrown out of the college, to cut this long story short. They hated me so much. They thought I was trying to create a revolution among the students. They were all insecure and they went against me, complained against me. Eventually I had to go. And I thought, no more teaching in a college. I will start. This is how I became an entrepreneur. So building trust and rapport, not only with students, but also with colleagues. In this case, they are 25, 26 years old. Some of them are teachers, mothers. Their parents will come. Don't tell her that I called you, but she has this problem. Every day I get this call. Parental interference. So we have to devise methods of creating a rapport and trust with all these people, making professional diagnosis. Why is it that this student, she's so good, but she's not able to answer questions? Why is it that this student is stressed? Every single individual needs our diagnosis. We have to be far ahead than psychologists and doctors in that. We need to develop very clever means of tapping all our resources. Do not think that we don't have resources. There are resources everywhere. So much resource actually. The only thing that is needed is a creative application of it. We have to find out, okay, this works here, this works here. That creativity is all that we need. Managing work and responsibilities. All these for you teachers who work in colleges, I'm sure are very big issues. How I don't get time because I have to manage all these roles. There is so much paperwork we have to do. There are so many classes we have to handle. These are our excuses actually, because these are only excuses. If we are very good managers, we'll be able to solve these problems. Building skill and confidence in others, because developing students as leaders is a huge challenge. Because they don't have the skill. You have to spend extra time developing their skill, developing their confidence in the work that they are doing. But it pays. If you do it, it pays. And managing mismatch of expectations. All these people who come will have their expectations and baggages. And when what you are doing is not what they expect, huge clash. Again, you have to solve that, managing the pressures of commitment and control. Again, as a parent, as a mother, and as a teacher, I keep confronting this all the time. We are committed to students and we want them to do certain things and come up better. With my children, with my son also, I feel the same. But there is a very thin line between control and domination. And when your commitment becomes domination, it doesn't work. It should not become control. Freedom should still be there. That is a very great challenge I've always faced. And of course, balancing personal and professional roles. So the next point we have to talk about is teacher leadership can be stimulating, but it may also lead to burnout and dissatisfaction and conflict almost all the time. It is fulfilling, but you have to constantly deal with. You feel fed up. I can't do anything more. Burnout, dissatisfaction. You expect a lot, you put in more, but this is not the result. The result is not what you expect. Dissatisfaction and conflict, leading to anger and frustration. And I have had so many times in my life when I just wanted to stop teaching and I'm going to shut down my institute. And I keep telling this also, especially being a woman, we express our emotions even more. But that is also a very big, advantage that I have, that I am a woman, that I'm emotional and sensitive. These conflicts always should be managed and brought out. Eventually it should end up as advantages, as a positive consequence. Next point I want to tell you. The same as what I just said, teacher leadership is not easy because leadership always involves change. When you are a leader, you are bringing out a change, and change is not easy. People don't want change. They have inertia. Change is accompanied by conflict and confusion invariably, and the contemporary society demands only performance, not learning. The contemporary society demands standardization, not individuality. And our focus as leaders is on learning and individuality. That is clashing with the expectations of the system and the society. So that is why teacher leadership is very, very difficult. Teacher leadership marks, therefore, a move towards a fluid classroom, which is a commonplace now. Everybody talks about it. A fluid classroom and self-directed learning. We don't want a classroom anymore. That is why the classroom that was being drawn got wiped out. We don't want a classroom anymore. We want learning to be wherever the student is. Like there is the idiom, if Muhammad does not come to the mountain, let the mountain go to Muhammad. Like that, if the student does not come to the classroom, which they don't, in my classroom anyway, after all this shaking up and everything, they choose to sit in their homes and study. But what is very heartwarming is those students who came casually thinking that they can just attend a few classes and enjoy life, end up bunking classes certainly, but they end up studying so much in the hostels and houses where they live, because they begin to use their resources, they begin to use the internet. I give them also a profusion of multimodal learning materials, printed materials, audiovisual materials, etc. And self-directed learning happens. Self-directed learning is the norm of the day, I think, especially in this mobile worlds. Adults, and especially since we teach adults, adults have a deep psychological need to be self-directed, to be autonomous learners. They don't want to be taught. That is the truth. If they can learn by themselves, that is the most wonderful thing for them. So, what is self-directed learning? Just in a nutshell to remind you, it does not mean, self-directed learning does not mean learning in isolation. It means learning with the help of friends, experts, books, print and audiovisual materials. The learner primarily has to take the initiative and responsibility. It should not come from the teacher. The learner should be pushed into taking the initiative for learning, for taking responsibility for learning. If I keep telling them, if you do not remember, if you are feeling pressurized, you have to, with my help or without my help, whatever way, you have to solve it. You are responsible. I do not want to be spoon feeding you. I do not want to teach you everything, make you feel complacent, make you feel happy. Yeah, teacher taught me, I know everything. This was in your school days. Even that was wrong. Now it is not going to happen. Give them responsibility, push them out of their comfort zones. Learner should plan, conduct, evaluate learning activities. All my students in their 25th year of life, after having had 17, 18 years of education, they come to me and say, from where should I start learning? What is the method in which I should study? This should have been given to them in their school days. School should have been spent in teaching them how to learn. We unfortunately didn't do that. And of course I help them. I give them a method and all that, but I say, this is my method. Don't think this is patented, okay? My study methods are patented. You can't use my methods. If you want, you develop something on your own, depending on your personality and situations and resources. You don't think you can copy my method and get anywhere, I tell them. So they have to be pushed into not only planning, conducting, as well as evaluating their learning activities. If you are pressurized, if you can't remember, something is wrong with your learning, evaluate it, solve it. Otherwise, you need not pass. I tell them, you need not pass until you learn how to study. You need not pass and become teachers. Then the qualities of a self-directed learner should be independence, ability to make choices, the capacity to fix the norms and limits of the learning activity. And the features of, it's almost ending, features of adult self-directed learning. I am so happy to have read this in books, that self-directed learning will not be continuous. Do not expect them to come every day to class. Once the fire is lit, once that passion is on, they will not have time to come and listen to your lectures all the time. Record your lectures, give it to them so that they can listen it at their own leisure if they want. Otherwise, they might be better learners than you. They might not even need your lectures. So it will be discontinuous. It will be episodic. There should be concrete learning goals. Helping them establish the goals is important, because they want to solve some problems, solve problems. Like that is how they want to proceed. They may adopt individual learning strategies and may not conform to group strategies. Do not confuse them by first giving them responsibility and pushing them towards self-directed learning and then expecting them to come to class and do everything along with the group. They will become confused. They will become frustrated. Let them, but keep checking on what they have learned and keep evaluating their progress or helping them evaluate their progress. That is very important. Then finally, our action research project, when we did this for 15 years without knowing what we were doing, and for the last 5 years we have been doing it knowing what we are doing, aware of the theories behind it, has been primarily to help students to unlearn and relearn, to build habits of the mind that are new, that are suited to their individual conditions, rather than follow what everybody else has been doing mindlessly, and explore connections between learning and context more and more, to practice learning as a social and collective. For example, I give my students test papers every day. I encourage them to discuss and look up in the internet and use the books. It starts like with the feeling that they are cheating me on their exam. Let them cheat, because what is important is, last slide, what is important is that they learn. What is important is not whether you check your ignorance. So learning, let there be discussions, let it be collective. Learning as self-directed and value-based, learning as multimodal, applied and continuous, and we should be focusing on mentoring rather than lecturing. It should not be lecturing that should be the focus. If they don't want, don't let them listen to the lectures, but mentoring. And finally, vary the approaches according to learners and context. That brings us to the end of this presentation. Last 1 more minute. I just need time to move the slides. To do all these things, I had to engage in a lot of entrepreneurial exercises. I had to start a publishing company where students are working. I had to start a gaming club where students are playing games and making games. I had to start a training organization where students are helping me develop materials and get trained, and they are doing training also. I had to start a literature merchandise shop where students are developing material. Some of these you can see outside in our exhibition, or you can, many of you know. If you are interested, I am ready to share more details with you. Some of my students are now working on a new project, a project where I'll be taking students and scholars to UK, primarily UK, and eventually, if possible, to Europe, where they can visit places and authors, museums and things like that, and experience whatever they have read in books. I got this idea because even though I have read Wuthering Heights 100 times, it's an exaggeration, 2-3 times, and I have taught it probably 100 times. When I went and stood in Yorkshire and saw the rolling hills, I understood that I knew nothing about Wuthering Heights. My whole experience of the novel changed in that landscape, going to Haworth Parsonage and seeing Bronte Museum. I want learning to be experiential for my students. So I'm exploring possibilities of a literary tour company where students will work and get trained and also be able to visit these places. So there's some samples of what we have done. This is the encyclopedia that students, it is through collaborative writing we have prepared this. Lots of students have helped me collect material and put it across like this. And this is the web-based kind of technique that I told you. This is Bart's Stems, which is also available outside, where students have rewritten actual historical events as well as incidents from literature in a journalistic manner, which now students in many colleges have taken up that activity, and they're all doing it now. This we made like 3-4 years ago. In this pseudo newspaper, we call it, there are news like Queen Elizabeth is no more, as well as Hamlet is no more. Both are there in the newspaper, and we play games like this in the classroom. They have game fests like this, working with tangible things. Remember, we are teaching advanced students literature. That is the innovation. They're all postgraduates and they are preparing for NET exam, and this is not a school classroom, and we are not learning language at all. We are learning literature and using Montessori school techniques in our advanced learning classroom. This is a puzzle notebook which is also there. I have it with me. This is actually a notebook, but in between we have puzzles. Very simple puzzles like match the following, fill in the blanks, but with advanced content. This is on Caribbean literature. A person who knows nothing about Caribbean literature can buy the book and do these puzzles by going online, searching out all the information, and by the time he finishes writing in the book, I'm sure he'll be an expert in Caribbean literature. African literature also we have. And then these are pages from the puzzle notebook. Puzzles like this. Again, teaching postgraduates in English, that is the difference. It is not for school children, even though it looks like it. And a lot of communication activities also we do based on it, talking about all this. These are calendars that we made and birthday cards that we made, which can all be used in the classroom to talk about, you know, in a classroom with 100 students, even though they are advanced students, ask them to bring, you know, these objects that they have made, and okay, today you have Robert Burns's card here, talk about Robert Burns, have a discussion for 10 minutes, and only after that we'll proceed with the class. Those 10 minutes are more valuable than the other 55 or 50 minutes that you lecture. Do away with the 50 minutes. The 10 minutes is important. And we have mugs and t-shirts and all that. Many people, conservative teachers, have outright in my face scolded me for doing all these things. You are destroying literature. You are corrupting the discipline. People have said that so many times. You are a scum of the earth. But my students love it and they're learning better because of it. They come and tell me, now we love literature. We understand why we are learning literature. That's all I want to hear. Flaubert's Parrot, Julian Barnes's novel, has become our t-shirt, and all that. I'm not going to talk about it because you are hungry. So we come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.